All right, let's talk about one of nature's weirdest and most wonderful creatures. We're talking about an animal that is just a masterclass in evolution. But, it also brings up some really simple questions. I mean, really think about it. It's such a fundamental part of most land animals. Did snakes just never get the memo? Or did they have them and decide they were better off without them? It's a pretty big feature to just lose. And it's not just the lack of legs, right? Their entire body plan is just different. It's like they're playing by a completely different set of rules than most other animals out there. So today, we're going to figure out exactly what those rules are. Now, to really solve these mysteries, we have to kind of shift our perspective. For a long time, scientists focused on why snakes lost their legs. But now they're asking a much deeper, much more powerful question. How? How did it actually happen on a biological level? And here's the difference. The why is all about adaptation. The classic evolutionary answer. Oh, legs probably got in the way when they were burrowing or swimming. And that makes sense. But the how? That takes us right into the genetic code itself. It asks, how do you literally rewrite the instruction manual for building a body? And this is where this incredible field called Evo-Devo comes into play. You can think of these scientists as biology's master detectives. They're the ones looking at the DNA blueprints to figure out exactly how evolution tinkers and redesigns animals over millions of years. Okay, so let's tackle that first mystery, the legs. The answer is so much cooler than snakes just missing some kind of leg gene. It all comes down to a tiny little genetic switch that got broken. So, here's a way to think about it. Imagine your DNA is like the electrical wiring of a huge building. The genes themselves are like the light bulbs. They are the instructions to build stuff. But you need switches to tell those light bulbs when and where to turn on. Our bodies are just full of these genetic switches. And you're not going to believe this, but the master gene that kicks off limb development has an amazing name. Yes, scientists actually named it the sonic hedgehog gene. When this gene gets flipped on in an embryo, it's the master command that basically shouts, okay, build a limb right here. So in a mouse embryo, for example, the sonic hedgehog switch gets flipped to on in the exact spots where legs are supposed to grow. Simple enough. But in snake embryos, that specific switch for the limbs is busted. It's basically stuck in the off position forever. So the command to build legs is just never sent. Now, this is the really critical part to get. The sonic hedgehog gene itself is totally fine in snakes. It's still active and doing other important jobs, like helping to build the brain and nervous system. It has lots of different switches for its different jobs. Evolution didn't delete the whole program. It just snipped the one tiny wire that connected it to making legs. Pretty clever, huh? Okay, so that's the leading idea on how snakes lost their legs. But what about that unbelievable length? Well, it turns out this is also a story about genetic commands. But instead of a broken switch, it's more like a stuck key on a keyboard. This is honestly the perfect analogy for what's happening. As any normal vertebrate embryo is developing, there's a genetic command that says, okay, build a segment of the torso. And after a certain number of those, a new command is supposed to kick in that says, all right, that's enough torso, time to switch to building the tail. But in snakes, that build torso command just keeps going. It's like it gets stuck on repeat, copying and pasting torso segments over and over and over again. The signal to switch to build a tail gets massively delayed, which lets them pack in hundreds of extra vertebrae. It's such a simple little tweak in timing, but it creates a totally radical new body. So this is all super interesting for snakes, but here's where it gets really mind-bending. Let's see how all this connects back to our own bodies, because these genetic switches, they're not just in snakes, they're in us too. And some of ours might just be switched off. We've all heard of animals like salamanders, right? If they lose a leg, no big deal. Their body can just access its original DNA blueprint and build a perfect new one from scratch. The instructions are there and the switches are ready to go. And that leads to a really tantalizing question about ourselves. Our bodies obviously have the instructions to build arms and legs. We all did it once in the womb. So why is it a one-and-done deal for us? Why can't we tap into those instructions again if we need to? Well, the incredible idea coming out of Evo-Devo is that this ability might not actually be gone. It might just be dormant. The genetic switches that would allow for large-scale regeneration might have been flipped to the off position by evolution right after we're born. But hold on, why would evolution turn off such an amazing superpower? Well, it was probably a trade-off.
For our ancient ancestors, trying to regrow a whole arm would be super slow and take a ton of energy. But even worse, it would mean having a massive open wound for months on end. And that's basically an open invitation for a deadly infection. In a world before antibiotics, the much safer survival strategy was to just scar over the wound as fast as possible and learn to live with the injury. It wasn't a flaw, it was a life-saving adaptation.
So the story of the snake teaches us that evolution is this incredible tinkerer, switching genes on and off to create all this amazing diversity. And it leaves us with this one final profound thought. If the potential to regrow limbs is still hiding in our DNA, just switched off, what other abilities, what other superpowers might be locked away in our code, just waiting for us to find the right switch?